Beginning in the 1930s, farmers in the United States began using fertilizers containing nitrogen and phosphorus. As agriculture expanded over time, the number of farmers along the Mississippi River Basin have increased as well. This increase in farming paired with the fertilizers results in nutrient-rich water from the runoff into the Mississippi River, and this serves as a base in the process of eutrophication. Eutrophication is when excess nutrients are present in the water, leading to algae blooms that block sunlight from going into the water. When the algae blooms start to break down, the process consumes the oxygen in the water, creating these hypoxic environments known as dead zones. These dead zones are characterized by having oxygen levels so low to the point where most marine life can't survive in those habitats. As the river flows, the extra nutrients in the hypoxic waters flow down the Mississippi and into the Gulf of Mexico, creating a massive dead zone. According to National Geographic, in 2010, the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico was about 7,776 square miles, compared to about 3,861 square miles in 1985. While the average size of the dead zone grows steadily, it's more relevant now than ever because of how fast things can take a turn. In 1998, a single algae bloom event in Hong Kong wiped out 90% of the stock and fish farms, resulting in an economic loss of $40 million. So it isn't exactly a brand new issue, but it kind of makes you ask yourself, why aren't there more steps being taken to solve it? But really what makes it a difficult problem to solve is the importance of agriculture in Minnesota as a whole from an economic point of view. According to the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry, Minnesota ranks 7th in the nation in agricultural production at $21.3 billion and also exports $9.3 billion worth of goods every year, with them mainly being soybeans and corn. In addition to that, agricultural production and processing industries generate over $106 billion and support more than 388,000 jobs. So needless to say, it has a big impact, and the effects will be noticed if that industry was gone. As you might imagine from those numbers, agriculture plays a pretty big role in the eutrophication process. Although it's significant as it is, it's not the only contributing factor, nor the oldest. In addition to agriculture's role in eutrophication, human modifications to the Mississippi River system play a role as well. Beginning in 1881, the Corps of Engineers started the construction of Winnie, the first dam built on the Mississippi River in northern Minnesota. It was put into operation in 1884 with the intended purpose of controlling water flow and flooding in the upper Mississippi. Flash forward to present day, the Mississippi River has 29 locks and dams, creating a system that allows flood control and the transportation of 175 million tons of freight via barges annually. These dams, in addition to the channelization of the river for the barges, alter the natural nutrient cycle in the water. The nutrient-rich water that's flowing down from the river goes into these stagnant reservoirs that the dams create, triggering the algae blooms. These reservoirs, paired with the fertilizer runoff, contributes and accelerates the process of eutrophication significantly. There are two direct benefits that are usually seen with the use of excess nutrients in agriculture, and those are better crop yields and, surprisingly enough, improved fish yields as well. But it's important to notice that the relationship between eutrophication and fish yields are a bit more context dependent, and it's very unsustainable. Since the nutrients from the runoff stimulate the growth of algae, it causes the increase in primary producers, which form the base of the food chain. In addition to the increase in algae, the nutrients also promote the growth of phytoplankton, which is a form of microscopic algae. The presence of this microscopic algae creates a more abundant and diverse food web ever than before. Despite this, these increased fish yields are short-lived and ultimately result in a declining population overall as the hypoxia takes over. There's a clear benefit to why the agriculture industry uses these fertilizers, but it doesn't seem like they're facing any of the consequences. Instead, the seafood industry pays the price, in addition to the marine life, of course. Louisiana is home to a $2.4 billion seafood industry. That includes a large amount of small family-operated shrimp farms along the Gulf of Mexico. Shrimps also hold the spot for the most consumed species in the United States, so needless to say, they play a pretty big role in our diets. But that's speaking collectively, of course, because I personally don't really like shrimp. But anyways, yeah, it plays a pretty big role in our diets and the economy. The Southern Shrimp Alliance is a non-profit organization created to ensure the existence of the U.S. shrimp industry. The SSA consists of domestic shrimp fishermen housed in 8 warm water shrimp producing states that consist of Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Texas. In 2021, they stated that the landings in shrimp in the Gulf of Mexico have been down 23% prior to the historical average of 24.9 million pounds. While this already takes a toll on small-scale and large-scale aquatic farmers alike, eutrophication affects the prices and sizes of the shrimp as well. In a study led by Duke University and funded by the NOAA, it has been discovered that the price of large shrimp are higher relative to small shrimp during these hypoxic events. While the quantity of shrimp caught could remain the same, there will be a large decrease in size, creating an economic impact that can be seen from the point of view of the consumer, producer, or the market. While I provided statistics for the agriculture industry in Minnesota and the fishing industry in Louisiana, it's important to notice that they aren't the only ones involved. The Mississippi flows through 10 states on its way down south, and it's safe to say Minnesota isn't the only state that has agriculture. For the Gulf of Mexico, there are 5 states along the coast. Those consist of Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. All these states combined collectively represent about 28% of the fishing jobs in the United States. And collectively, they fish for more than just shrimp, too. As we can see, it isn't a realistic option to just stop, as the economic impact would be too great on both sides. And not only are jobs being supplied, but it's food as well. Fishing in the Gulf of Mexico commercially requires a permit on board. Just like recreational state fishing licenses, there is a limit and set of restrictions and limitations for each kind of fishing, but it's just on a much larger scale than you'd see at a state level. The Gulf of Mexico can be seen as a regulated common pool resource because of a few factors. As you can guess from all the numbers I threw at you before, there's a large scale of communities that depend on it economically, whether that be from fishing commercially or tourism and even the oil and gas industry. The ecosystems are all interconnected within the Gulf of Mexico, and managing the resources that come from the Gulf of Mexico is a collective action where everyone involved is required to stay within the guidelines in order to keep it a sustainable resource. That can manifest in fishing seasons, limits, locations to stay away from, and banned methods of fishing. The consequences of this can be seen through fines and fees that occur, or in the future state of fishing overall that shows itself in like depleted fish populations, disrupted food chains, and harm the coral reefs and whatnot. All those communities that use and rely on the Gulf of Mexico for resources benefits long term by staying within these limitations and overall keeping the habitat sustainable. It honestly just makes me wonder if there's a certain benefit or cost that can be seen in the agriculture industry that will directly affect them and kind of make them change routes and find ways to limit eutrophication. I know shrimp farmers have been sending shrimp up to farmers up north as well too, but of course that's not enough for them to change what's been working for years, so what will?